Hello, everyone, and welcome to Developing with CockroachDB Office Hours. This is a developer-focused success program with a series of workshops and office hours to help you tackle your biggest developer aspirations. We want to help you get the most out of CockroachDB, utilizing what you know so well with SQL and Postgres. If you've taken Cockroach University and you are a new to or intermediate user of Cockroach Serverless, bring us onto your journey. We want to help you learn how to make the most of the platform and help us improve your experience. Yesterday was a module on migrating existing data to CockroachDB. If you have any questions from yesterday's workshop, ask us here. You can ask us here on Slack, you can ask us on forum. And so today we have our two enterprise architect experts. I would like to go ahead and introduce Bram.
Hello.
Bram, talk to me about your path here at Cockroach Labs.
Let's see. I was one of the first employees at Cockroach Labs. Did engineering for 4.5 years, and then I shifted to be an enterprise architect, and now I'm a manager of the financial services group of enterprise architects. So, yeah, I've written Cockroach and used Cockroach so much. I still love it, and I'm still around because this is a really fun journey.
Awesome. You're a real OG. And also with us, I would like to introduce Fabio. Welcome,
Hello,
Fabio.
Lori.
Hello.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I've been working for Cockroach Labs for about a year and something, a year and a few months. I work actually with the Bram's team in the FinServ division. So very interesting use cases, a great team, great excitement about the product, similar to what Bram has expressed.
Awesome. And I am Lori Morita. I'm a project manager for our customer success org here at Cockroach Labs. I have been here for about 7 months. So we are here to answer any questions from yesterday. We actually received a question at the end of our workshop yesterday that we ran out of time. So let's get started with that one.
Actually, there was a question of where to put in questions.
I think it's right there, right?
Yeah, that.
So you got that one in.
Rashad, we see your questions, so you can use LinkedIn to post them, and we will answer them here. Okay, so this is the question we received yesterday. Alexandre from LinkedIn asked, user file is better than cat file.sql cockroach SQL -- URL?
I might take a stab at this one. A user file is a way to importing data and exporting data. So it's like a protocol to import and export data using a sort of file system that CockroachDB makes available. Cockroach SQL, so sending a file into the Cockroach SQL command is running SQL commands against the database. User file is for exporting and importing data more than reading a file that has a SQL statements in it. So if you have a lot of SQL statements that you wanna send to the database, then yes, the cat file is a way of doing it. If, however, you want to export or import data to a local file system, then you would use user file. Slightly different use cases of why you want to use one or the other. So it's not that one is better than the other. It depends exactly what you want to do. Generally, if you want to import a lot of data, then by far what we suggest is you would use some sort of import statement rather than an individual insert statement by means of a file. Hope this helps. Alexandra, if you're attending these sessions, let us know.
Thanks for that, Fabio. It looks like we have another question that just came in from Rashab. I wanted to understand how should I approach benchmarking CockroachDB on YCSB benchmarks.
Do you want to take this, Fabio? I can.
No,
How-
we have guides. Yeah,
we definitely have guides on how to do this. We also have a built-in
Mm-hmm.
YCSB benchmark. So Cockroach, if you type Cockroach workload on the binary, you should get a list of benchmarks, and YCSB is one of them. As far as an actual guide on how to do it,
we might have something in our docs. Let me pull this up.
yeah. And another question of what is YCSB? So that's the Yahoo. Oh, CS benchmark. What's it stand for? I'm going to look it up.
Is
Yahoo Cloud Serving Benchmark. It's really designed for a KV store over. It's designed for a KV store more than a relational database, but we do use it.
Yeah, shares a link.
I
shared the link. Mm-hmm. Sorry.
Yeah. So I have found that YCSB is great for loading large amounts of data and just doing very basic operations, so reads and writes. And there's A, B, C, D, E, F. I think there's like G different versions of it that you can run, and it's really useful for loading a lot of data and testing. Like if you're just looking for raw transactions per second, reads per second, inserts per second, updates per second, that's what it's really good for. It's also really easy to scale. So if you're looking to do something multi-region, you can do so with YCSB with relative ease compared to other benchmarks that make it significantly tougher like TPC-C and things like that. Even though TPC-C is better for relational databases, and we have a whole setup for that. And the way to run TPC-C, if you look at our cloud report, we cover the steps we use to run it. And we have I think an open source repo on exactly the steps we do. Does that help?
Yeah, I posted another link to the TPCC benchmarking. That awfully helpful in understanding how CockroachDB performs, what you can use to understand the TPCC performance, CockroachDB performance.
Yep. Benchmarking is tricky. This private chat. Okay, yeah. So benchmarking is tricky because it's all about how do you get the most performance for the database you're benchmarking, and trying to compare multiple databases sometimes is very tough because you want it to be you want to make it as fair a playing field as possible. You want as close to an apples to apples comparison, and that's really hard to do. So if you're comparing Cockroach to another database, use their best practices as well as ours to try to, and try to do it on the same machine types, in as close to a comparison. But the problem is CockroachDB is very different than other databases. This is true of every database. They're all slightly different, but Cockroach is a sort of different paradigm with the distributed SQL nature of it, backed with a KV store hiding all the way down.
And as a reminder, if you missed yesterday's workshop, migrating existing data, you can find it on the YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/CockroachDB. If you're watching from any other channels other than YouTube, YouTube's the only place where you can find all the recordings.
Are there more questions right now? We can talk about other things. So Fabio, we have a 20.2 launch.
Yes, we had it just the other day. It was exciting.
I'm so excited about it. I'm like, most stable version of Cockroach we've ever had. So many improvements. I don't know. For me, admission control is what I want, and I've wanted that for a while. So I'm really happy that we're finally the start of proper admission control, because it's really key, especially if you're doing like a microservice architecture or something like that, to be able to prevent one bad actor from ruining the performance.
Yes, absolutely. I enjoyed the upgrades they've done to the backup and restore. They greatly improved the performance of backup and restore, which has been long been a question with some of our customers, some of my customers, about the performance speed. They seen it, the robustness has increased, the speed has increased. That's tremendous. I think it's terrific. I think it's great. The many stability is the key part, right? It can always be about new features all the time. Sometimes you want to have a robustness and improving performance of the current features that you have, which we have is great. I was excited about serverless. I mean, it came out a couple of weeks ago, but I keep on using more and more every day for my quick testing. And it's always an up and running database. I just connect and that's it. It's right there. I don't have to think about anything. I don't need to bring it up in Docker, bring it down, delete it. It's always just so easy. It's just easy. There are, of course, other features, but.
Yeah. So, Rain, I see you had some questions. What is mission control? It's not mission control, admission control. So how many queries are allowed into the cluster at a time, so that if you're out of CPU or out of memory or something like that, then we don't just... it's better to slow down the queries at the source than to have everything get backed up within the database. And this is hard to do in Go. Are these features available via serverless? Admission control was built for serverless because we needed to be able to make sure that serverless is obviously a shared database, a shared cluster behind the scenes. It looks like one database when you connect to it. And we want to make sure that, again, someone isn't hammering it with extremely huge, long queries and choking out everyone else's experience. So,
noisy neighbors problems.
Yes.
Also called.
Good questions, Rain. As a reminder, we do have the chat overlay so you can see any comments that are coming in from everywhere. We're on Twitch, LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook. We're also on Twitter. Let us know, if you like seeing the comments up on the screen. We did receive some feedback from yesterday's workshop that made it a little hard to read when John was screen sharing. So we'll definitely keep that in mind for the next workshop. We'll keep that minimized while we're screen sharing. So.
I like the idea that we finally have correlated CTEs. But that's like the deep SQL. if you've got some very crazy SQL, correlated CTEs are really kind of cool.
Lisa just commented, she likes seeing the comments during office hours. Agreed, it's hard during demos. Yeah.
Use case for CTE, correlated CTEs. CTEs in general are useful because you need to use, if you want to walk a tree, you need recursive CTEs, which we've offered for a while. So if you had a table that links back to itself, so say a hierarchy table, employees and like managers and who works, like what's that tree look like, and then that's where recursive CTE goes in. And a correlated CTE, you want to be able to have a query in a part of the subquery is pulled out into the main query. So a subquery that references columns defined outside the subquery. We're getting deep into it, yeah. But you can walk the tree with a CTE. That's kind of one of the main purposes of it.
And what is a tree? Someone asked from LinkedIn.
No, that says walk the tree. It's just it's how do you walk the tree is using a CTE. And I remember when we first added them, I was excited. But you need recursive CTE to perform that tree walk. So NewSQL. NewSQL was what we thought we were going to call Cockroach's category for a while, and we realized NewSQL wasn't really the right thing because we instead rebranded it sort of as distributed SQL. I think that's what our marketing has been pushing, because it gets across better what it is. It's distributed SQL. This is what Cockroach is. It's a SQL database, but instead of just being in one place, you can distribute it, and you can distribute it globally. You can do it in different regions. We have all the multi-region tools available to be able to speed up reads and writes so as long as you can place the application, microservice, whatever it is, close to where people are requesting something and close to the data itself, but still get the survivability guarantees of a distributed NoSQL-like system. So distributed SQL seems to be where the industry is moving away from NewSQL. I don't care. I just know that this is the database that I always wanted. So for me, when the opportunity came up to start working on the database that I wished existed, that was just a yes for me. It was an easy decision. And I'm glad that I'm not the only one who wanted it, because there's clearly a lot of people that are interested in a distributed SQL system.
Yeah, with the ACID guarantees for their transactions. That's a key feature. Rishab, I see your note about having some background in Hadoop. Quite interesting, because there are some of the elements of Hadoop that, being a distributed system, CockroachDB itself, you will find familiar, and that the distribution of a load, distribution of operations, to pushing the computation as close to the data as possible, and limiting, therefore, network traffic. So when there is an operation going on, be it an aggregation, a sorting, some filtering, or of course, reading data, that is done as distributed as possible by pushing this computation as close to the node as possible where the data resides. And each of the node in the cluster of CockroachDB will perform as much computation as it can, is in the map section, if you're familiar with the map reduce paradigm. And then the data then is sent over the wire to a single gateway node, which will perform the last possible computation before returning to the clients. So some understanding of Hadoop, you will be familiar with the same paradigm. It's similar to what is MapReduce, the idea of pushing computation as close to the data as possible, and limiting network traffic to as low as few bytes as possible. You don't want to get all the data from one node and do the computation there. No, you want to distribute it. You want to do parallelize as much as possible. So that was CockroachDB is about when it does one of the transactions. That's how it handles a transaction. Hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, we're not a classic SQL database in a single place, but at the same time, we're also not a full-on distributed NoSQL database. We're some hybrid of the two, borrowing what we think are the best parts. And that's why I find it fascinating. And yeah, as Fabio said, it's the ACID property of the transaction is so key.
Yes,
because when I remember my days, I was working at Microsoft and using SQL Server, and when you realize you just have to start locking everything to the moment you start to have multiple microservices all trying to touch the same table, things, well, not multiple microservices, but multiple instances of the same microservice. I'm not breaking microservice rules. And the moment we start locking, things start to slow down. So not having the database handle that on its own helps so much. It takes a lot away. It makes it a lot easier to create these larger systems.
Yeah, just you mentioned the ACID transaction. I think the other great feature of CockroachDB is the one that I've been started from the get-go with a SQL interface. that we see now is key for new developers like to start with coding with CockroachDB. It's a same old SQL, so to say, Postgres wire compatible. It makes everybody comfortable. Everybody knows a little bit of SQL. It's easy to get started. You don't have to learn a specific language just to use CockroachDB, which you cannot use anywhere else. It's just a standard. It's just a standard, been for the past 40 years. That's why we are not a new SQL. Yeah, we are a SQL database. Yeah, with a different architecture under the hood. Yes, that's a totally different setup. But it's a SQL database. It's a relational SQL database. And Rishabh, I ask a question back. What are you working on? What are you interested in? Have you tried logging into Cockroach serverless? How do you find it? Did you test it out? Cost nothing. So I hope you have been able to log in and see and try it out.
Yeah, definitely let us know. We love hearing your feedback and letting us know how we can help you.
Mm-hmm. Let's see what other question come up.
So I'll ask a fun question. Fabio, what databases have you used professionally in the past?
Hadoop.
just Hadoop.
We used Oracle when I'm on my time in Thomson Reuters. Oracle 11. Yes. We had the Thomson Reuters provides that area of Thomson Reuters provided a venue for trading foreign exchange, for trading currencies. And of course, every transaction had to be recorded, and they had the Oracle as the database of service, as a system of record. I remember we had an incident when someone in production, you're talking about admission control, created this query that would pull data, but this query was a very, very highly analytical query run against a production workload not at peak hours, but during the business hours. It basically blocked the entire database. We had our SRE teams had to go in and kill it, but it really did enough damage before you spot it and you can kill it. It takes a lot of damage. So the future process was take a backup of the database, restore it in a non-production environment, and run the query against that. Because it would stop entire. You didn't have a CQRS type of system. That analytical databases they're specialized for analytical workloads. You can flood an OLTP database like Oracle was for that use case, and Thomson Reuters with analytical queries in the middle of a working day. So that was fun. It was a fun way.
See, for myself, I've used SQL Server, MySQL, Mongo, Hadoop, Postgres, Access. I even used Access professionally. I'm sure there's more. We got some more questions, though, which are good. So how to learn SQL? I just taught myself. We are working on an intro to SQL class, I think. But I don't know we do have an intro to SQL class. Even better. There's an intro to SQL class at Cockroach University. So I would say that's a good place to start. I haven't taken it. Have you looked at it, Fabio?
No, I didn't take an intro to SQL. I think also a good way to learn SQL is really by trying. We have the SQL Playground, which is an instance of CockroachDB up in a browser. So you don't have to log in or install anything. You just go to the browser. Actually, if Lori or someone else can put the link in the chat.
It's already there.
Oh, good. So you, the SQL Playground?
Oh, not SQL Playground.
Yeah, no, for the SQL playground, and you just play around with it. You go through the tutorials. It's pretty easy to learn. It's very close in the semantics to plain English. Select this from that, join this and that, and then do some filtering where this equals to that and where this equals to the other. It's pretty simple to learn. The advanced SQL is obviously more complicated, and you have to take a course.
Yeah, you don't need correlated recursive CTEs for basic SQL. There's the SQL playground.
Yeah, that's the one. Thank you for posting it. Sorry, that's great. I love that because you don't need to install anything. It's just there.
I actually ended up teaching my sister when she was in a university program, college program, and she was a fine art major who needed to learn collections management. And part of that was SQL because they needed to know how to query the database, just fundamentals of it. And that was a fun time where our two different, very separate educational paths collided. Anyway.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Rishab, I hope I said that right. I would say, since you're doing this type of thing, jump onto our Slack. We have a community Slack, and you can talk to some of the engineers that work on the cloud report and do this type of benchmarking directly, because you're going to get into the fine details if you're working on like a master's program, master's course or thesis.
Absolutely, yeah.
So please join the community Slack. They'll be able to help you directly, and I think that will work. It will be better. And if they're not helping, you're not getting responses, ping either Fabio or myself on there.
Yes. Yeah, that will help you get a more accurate picture of CockroachDB performance, how to do it, where to look for information, on which cloud to run it, which instances to use, which storage to use, because it's complicated. There is many storage layers, many offering the AWS, Google, and Azure do. So which one to pick can be problematic. The cloud report is very helpful for that. Definitely the help of our engineer in the community Slack is helpful. So do reach out if it's part of your master program. Yeah. Oh, Bram, he has another question. What are your thoughts on using Cockroach as data warehousing solution? So not really for ASCII transactions.
Yeah, it's okay. It will work for basic things, but I wouldn't recommend it for a straight OLAP. We're concentrating right now on transactions because that is the distributed transactions. A distributed SQL with proper ASCII transactions is something that just didn't exist, and now we have Cockroach, and so that's our main focus. But obviously, we're doing MapReduce. We're doing a distributed computing, and with that, you can do some OLAP stuff. We recommend it for very basic OLAP. If you're looking for basic reports and things that you don't mind, it's hard for us to online. So the OLTP is online transaction processing, and OLAP is online analytics processing. And then there's the hybrid. OLHP, I think. Do you remember what the hybrid one is?
There's H OLAP, M OLAP. There's various.
Anyway, yeah. So it's just saying analytics versus transactional. And with an analytics workload, you're really concerned more about it's for reporting and data gathering, and the transactional aspect is not as important. So I wouldn't recommend Cockroach as your main. Like, Cockroach is a great source of truth because you want to keep it consistent and updated. And then I would use something like our change feeds, send stuff out to Kafka via Kafka to some other system, an OLAP specified system, a specific system out there if you're doing heavy OLAP querying. But basic ones, yeah, Cockroach can handle it. We can handle all of SQL. And if you're doing something like a dashboard that's monitoring things, that's fine. You can absolutely use Cockroach for that. But anything serious, I wouldn't recommend it, but we should be able to get most.
Yeah, you can do joins and reports, totally possible doing, but I wouldn't run extremely long running query, something that on a specific data warehouse application will last long hours. That's not what the CockroachDB is for.
One thing that if you are going to be doing OLAP type queries, use follower reads. So follower reads are where you're querying data in the past. It's a Cockroach is everything at specific times. So when you're doing a transaction, it's happening now, and that timestamp is held throughout the whole transaction and recorded, because that's how we do our consistency. However, if you don't mind doing reading slightly in the past, 4.8 seconds right now, but we are trying to make that faster, but I can't promise anything. Then use a follower read pattern. I'm sure we can find a documentation on it that we can share, and that allows you to not interrupt main transactions with it. You're still using CPU, you're still using memory and everything else, but you're not going to conflict with business logic that's currently happening. So generally our recommendation is for things like, say you have a dashboard showing the status of everything from your application, we would recommend you do those queries with follower reads. And the reason it's called follower read, technically you could choose any time in the past. You can, at a specific moment in the past, you can do that. But follower read just means it can also read from a replica from a follower replica instead of the leader replica. But we're getting really into the weeds there.
Yes.
I love getting into that part.
Yeah, the takeaway is you can have both at the same time. You can have both of your LTP working and not be interrupted, and having your queries happen in the background in a consistent, always reading consistent data, because that's what CockroachDB is about. It's all about consistency, always over availability. But you can have the best of both worlds. So if you're okay with reading slightly in the past, and we are talking about 4 seconds in the past, then you can have also your long-running queries running at the same time as your OLTP workload without any interference. So this is great.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say about okay. Well, I see another about ACID transactions. Without going too much into the details, an ACID transaction is a transaction that is guaranteed to be completed in its entirety, so atomically, and is also durable, so nothing will be lost. So A stands for atomicity, C is consistent, so the state is always going to be consistent before and after the transaction has happened. And then is isolated. It means that while this transaction, one or two more transactions are happening, the database will behave as if the database is belonging to the transaction per itself. So you only have the database to itself for the duration of the transaction. And durable means that if immediately after you have committed that something destroys everything, the data has just been saved to disk. So it's not just done in memory where it goes super fast. Yeah, it's done in memory. It's actually written to disk. So that's when it's durable. So that's what you want. That's what you want for account balances. That's what you want for very sensitive information that you just cannot afford to have wrong. Imagine the classical is to transfer money from my account to your account. What happens if something in between happens? So is there money in my account? Is it not in yours? Is neither in mine and not in yours? Is both in mine and yours? It's completely gone. It's in the bank's account. So you want to have properly handled, right? So that's what it's all about.
Yeah. The durability is key here. A lot of people ignore that part. Yeah. Because you have to be able to handle failures. Yes. And our isolation level is serializable. And with that, you can't, the scenario that Fabio was just talking about can't happen. It will either, the money was transferred or it was not. There's no, hey, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't.
The real key is we do an F data sync, so a system call to the hard drive after every single such DML statement, after a single insert, every single update or delete has to be durable. And we don't just, some database they do it to the wall, to the write ahead log,
or they do it in memory. They have it in memory for a while and then they'll batch it down. And
yeah. No, that's not good enough, because what happens if immediately after that something happens? No, every time you need to have it in writing all the time, every time, and 3 times. You have to write it multiple times. That's about this. That's how you achieve true asset transactions. So no, it's not consistent. Eventual consistency is only consistent. There's no eventual consistency. Yeah. Eventual consistency means no consistency.
Yeah. So this is going back. I think it was Ben Darnell, one of our founders, put it to me early on and said, "Look, consistency is Boolean. You're either consistent or you're not. Whereas availability, you can say this is available, this is not. So it's a gauge." And so this is why we're a consistent and partition. So for CAP theory, consistency, availability, partitioning, pick two. Well, we're obviously partitioned because we're a distributed database, and the consistent side of it. Whereas we are highly available, but we will, as Fabio said earlier, sacrifice availability if we are not consistent. But hey, with the new release, we now have the ability to do what's called a bounded staleness read. So if you lose a chunk of your database more than quorum, you are able to do a bounded staleness read, which is kind of cool. It's like give me the last thing you know of to be true. Really useful in emergency situations, and kind of awesome.
Well, how the forum works, Laurie? I understand there are some. So I post if I'm a user, want to know more about CockroachDB, but I don't have the time. I want to do something asynchronously. I want to ask my question and get an answer. Can I use the forum for that? How does it work? Do I get an answer all the time?
Yeah, definitely. In addition to posting your questions on Slack, check out the forum. In my experience, questions seem to get answered quicker on there. So Rashad, definitely check that out too. Thanks, Fabio.
As for your question, Rain, is it automatic? We would never automatically push people to a less consistent read or write. So I added a link. I think, Laurie, you can paste it. So by default, it's opt-in, similar to our follower reads. If you want to be able to read something, but it could be a little stale, you choose to do so. So it's an active choice by the developers, because they're the ones who know for this query, do I need it to be consistent or not? As opposed to a lot of other systems where it's eventually you might get the right answer. That it's very tough when you're dealing with important data.
And I did want to highlight this. On the forum, you can also search by topics. So it's really helpful to see if someone has asked the same question before and if there's already an answer there.
Also check the usual suspects too, like Stack Overflow and things like
that. Yeah, that's one of the things I was asking about. The forum is actually very well curated. So you won't find, unlike Stack Overflow, questions that are relevant like 3 years ago.
Or stale, very stale.
And you need to make up. You need to check whether it's still relevant or not as my current version of the database. So our forum being curated by us and by our engineers, you cannot guarantee that the answer that you find is is true as of the version that currently was true for the time when the question was asked. So first, I would check our forum for asking questions, and then maybe around in blog posts and Stack Overflow. Stack Overflow is great, but you might find old questions.
And I did want to give everyone a heads up. Normally, we have workshops every 2 weeks. We are not going to have one next Wednesday, December 1st, but we will still have an office hours December 2nd. So come with your questions and we will answer them then.
Yeah, and nothing next week. Next week is off, right? We have Thanksgiving, so.
Right. Yeah, nothing, no workshops next week.
A special edition, a Thanksgiving edition.
I've been asked about my beard. Well, I had a very large beard during the pandemic. Now I got rid of the beard. I was clean shaven for Movember. So to raise awareness of men's health and whatnot. So grow a stash. and I'm trying to do sideburns. We'll see. they're sort of in. Hard to see from that angle, though. I don't know.
It's No Shave November.
Well, no, it's Movember specifically. It's a charity thing, and so you raise money for men's health, mental health, and
prostate cancer research.
Yep.
Yeah.
Started with I think it came from Australia originally. It's really big in Australia and Canada, not so much here in the US. But
in the UK is big too. In fact, I wanted to ask if you had a fundraising site where you because you do it. Oh, you posted it. I haven't.
Yeah, we posted it. It's in our internal Slack.
Sure.
But I'm sure people could look it up. I don't curate it much. But it's fun, and my wife likes when I do weird mustaches and stuff. She tolerated the giant beard, so I think cockroaches have hairs. Depends on the cockroach. There's some beautiful cockroaches. Some of the blue ones are great.
Yeah, I'm sure Lori wants to stay really close to those.
Oh yeah.
I don't mean the cockroaches in my place here.
Yeah, I'm surprised none of us are wearing our cockroach swag.
I am. This is very.
Oh, you are?
I am under this shirt, but I wanted.
Nice.
For this event, I thought let me dress up a little bit and let me wear a shirt so it looks nice and professional.
Right.
We are professionals. We work from home, but.
Yeah, there's some beautiful cockroaches out there. Yeah. I'm trying to find some pictures.
So yesterday, our topic was migrating existing data. Do y'all have a time where you had a data migration fail?
No, not personally. In my experience, you test a lot in your testing environment before you do something in production. So, no, hasn't happened to myself yet.
I can talk about an old case where we had a migration issue. I was working on Bing Shopping when I was at Microsoft. So years and years ago, back when Bing Shopping was its own team. And we had, it had to be like 20 SQL Server instances, sharded, obviously, because there was so much data and SQL Server can get large, but there was a limit. And we had miscategorized all of the TomTom GPSs as drums. And so I was tasked with writing a SQL query because, drums being TomTom, the drum. And so I was tasked with writing a query that would go through every single shard and every single GPS to make sure if it was made by TomTom, the company, or if it really was a drum. And that was a very large SQL query that took hours to execute and was a lot of fun. It was a failure, but it meant I got to write some cool SQL.
Nice.
Yeah. Okay, we got some questions on serverless versus CockroachDB dedicated or on-prem. Well, self-hosted, I think is what we call it now. It really depends on use cases. How easy is it to use CockroachDB serverless? Our goal is to make it as easy as it is to download the binary or Docker image and get started. So it should be that simple. But also don't be afraid to download the Docker image if you just want to run like a little test instance locally. Starting Cockroach is as easy as writing Cockroach demo locally, and doing serverless, it's you log in and you get a connection. 38 seconds. Yeah, we have a how long?
That's slow. 38 seconds is low. Rain,
Yeah.
Come on. You can do better than that.
Yeah. Don't we have a video of Cockroach versus Ramen?
Yeah, that is on YouTube.
I am losing power. I will be back in 1 second.
Did you watch the ramen video, Fabio?
Yes, I watched it. That's deceiving because it takes into consideration also the time to create an account, which is not the same as creating a database. So after you have been successfully creating an account, which is easy as putting your GitHub details, because there's a straight integration with GitHub, creating a cluster, serverless cluster, takes 5 seconds. Assuming you already have a SQL client installed, either pSQL or CockroachDB, then yes, setting it up is extremely fast. The connection is as simple. It's just very, very quick. 5 seconds, you have the database, and you connect, and then that's it. You're off for the races. In fact, we can demo it right now. That doesn't cost really anything.
Go ahead and show it. And I would recommend everyone watch the Cockroach versus Ramen. CockroachDB serverless versus cooking ramen.
All this talk about ramen it's making me hungry.
Well, he uses hot and spicy, blazing hot flavor here. So good for Charlie. That's the type of thing I would pick. I want super spicy every time.
I don't have a microwave. I cannot do ramen. I don't use microwaves in my household.
You can actually use a kettle and put boiling water in. You'll get the same effect.
That's the same thing right here.
Because that's all you're trying to do with the microwave is boil the water.
I never buy that food. I don't know. Some people do popcorn in the microwave. How does that work? I remember doing popcorn on the pan.
Yeah, I've got an air popping machine for my popcorn in my office here because it's isolated from where my daughter sleeps. So if we're doing like late night movie popcorn, it's on the other side of the house.
She can't smell it.
That's true too. The smell stays here, and it's quite loud. It scares the cats. And yeah, for ramen, I don't normally cook it at home. I live in Brooklyn. There's lots of great places to go.
Yeah. Session.
Yeah.
We have another question. Let's see.
Yeah, what happens when you start with the serverless, but then you need to scale? Well, the serverless can scale. At the moment is in beta, is still in a beta. But the idea is that you can decide what will be your spend per month or spend per week. You can customize this. You can restrict how much money how many resources you want to utilize in your serverless. So it scales ideally with your load. So the more queries you run, the more it will scale automatically. So you're dispensed from understanding how many resources do I need. That's the idea behind the serverless. Is you don't have to think about resources. You don't have to think about servers. You just take care about how many queries and eventually how much those queries cost in terms of what we call RU, resource utilization, resource units.
Resource units, yeah.
Resource units is a standard for serverless offerings, similar to other companies too. They have the same offerings. You pay per query rather than you pay for resources. And you can scale indefinitely, fairly enough. But you have a nice way where you can restrict how much money you can spend, so you don't blow your budget, so to say.
But let's say you really wanted to scale, then we'll help you go from like to significantly large size databases, then a large size cluster. We will help you go from Cockroach serverless to dedicated.
Dedicated.
And that's where our services as enterprise architects come in and help with that type of migration.
Dedicated is like Bram mentioned at the beginning, where serverless is like more of a shared cluster, a shared database, a shared cluster with many databases. Dedicated is it's your own hardware. It's just dedicated hardware to you with only you there. So it's a different concept here.
So there's two questions that came in. Rain, I'll get to yours in a second. First, there's which cloud? Well, to decide which cloud, I would recommend looking at our cloud report. I think we have a new one that's in the works too, but I don't know how far along we are. It should be out in the new year, I think. That's when we release it, generally January. I'm not 100% certain on that. But each cloud, because we have such competition in the clouds, this is amazing. So they're each going to try to outdo each other every year and try to be the top spot. And there you go. There's the 2021 cloud report, but I think that came out a good while ago now. I know we're working on the 2022. And I'm excited to see who's going to win this year because every year I'm surprised. Early next year. Yeah. So January, February timeframe. Yeah. New one is in the spring. Awesome. And I would use that cloud report because it talks not just general cloud, but what is the best for Cockroach. We've used, within Cockroach, we've used all three major cloud vendors a lot. And we use them, like, there was a while where we ran all of our testing on Azure. So ideally, we're cloud agnostic, and eventually, if you get really, really big, you can be multi-cloud. Because, hey, there was when was it, yesterday or the day before, where a good chunk of Google went down due to a networking issue. It's always a networking issue. It's really easy to blame that. Yeah. Ray, you had a question on if we had time to, what would I play with these days? I like building large machine learning systems. So for me, I would love to build. I'm not going to say what I'd be doing with machine learning. I really want to play with sort of larger scale deep learning things. So deep neural nets, and I would be using Cockroach as a source of truth for that.
Nice. So we are coming up at the top of the hour. So thank you for everyone who joined. As a reminder, we will not have a workshop in 2 weeks on December 1st, but our next show will be our database office hours on December 2nd. So come ready with questions. Again, this is not your only path to support. Please reach out to us on forum, on Slack, check out our docs online. And thank you, Bram and Fabio, for joining. And we will see you next time.
Thank you for having me. Thank you, Lori.
Thanks for all the questions.